Raising Your Inner Voice with Jay Foss.
Hey, party people. It is that time again. In this episode, we are focusing on the arts. We are focusing on the arts here and how the arts enhance your life. What particular part of your life is actually made better through the arts? Whether you're a creative in the arts field yourself or a consumer of the arts. The arts are a wide area. It covers music, painting, dance, poetry, physical movement, open mics, operas, concerts, the list goes on and on. Basically, I'm asking, how do the arts affect you? Particularly in a time when we aren't allowed to, or rather, we're encouraged to experience the arts in a way we formerly have. We're not going out in the same sense. Give us a call, add to the discussion. 1-800-370-1049 is the way to get in on the conversation here. A former colleague of mine, Aurelia Nelson, used to say that the arts are typically treated as the icing on the cake, or sometimes it's even an additional add-on. She believed that the arts are the cake, not the icing on it. She was speaking primarily on the economic impact. When going out to a show, when going to see an art exhibit, a display, what do most people do? We go out to dinner beforehand, maybe grab some drinks with friends afterwards. The arts impact the community financially. And that experience encapsulates the evening together. Well, I'm happy to bring the conversation to Lawrence tonight. Joining me now is Marquis Victor. He's the founding executive director of Elevated Thought. He leads Elevated Thought's vision, goals, and mission and manages ET's contracts, commissions, and partnerships. In addition to being a poet and artist himself, Marquis has a master's degree in education from Lesley University and compiled over 7 years of public school experience before focusing on Elevated Thought full time. Marquis, thanks so much for joining me this evening.
Yeah, peace. First time I'm on a talk radio show, so grateful to be here.
Well, welcome. So the name Elevated Thought, I love the name. Give me some history behind it.
Yes, for sure. So the idea was conceived in 2008 after, I went through my trials and tribulations as a young person trying to find consciousness. And then, I was getting my undergraduate degree at Salem State, where I had an internship with you all. My right-hand man and street artist, Alex J. Bryan, was doing a mural for his senior project. And at the time I was doing the spoken word circuit, and he asked me to do a spoken word piece to accompany it. And so on one side of the mural, there was a musician, jazz musician, and he was playing, and music notes were flowing in and out of this loose depiction of Lawrence. It was gritty, it was dark, it was ominous, but there were glimmers of hope through shading and highlights all throughout the piece. The music notes flowed to the other side of the mural, and there was this young woman. She was crying, and one of the tears formed the word, why? Why is there so much sorrow in the city? Why is it unending, unceasing? What she was asking through those tears. So we got in this big conversation. We had some other homies in the rented out construction warehouse that Alex was doing this plywood mural on. And, and I said, as seemingly insignificant as we are, maybe this is what we could do. We could address art. We could address social issues through art. And if nobody has any answers for those issues, we could come up with creative solutions ourselves. And I lifted my head up. I said, hey, this is Elevated Thought right here. And the idea and name stuck. And then we became an official 501c3 nonprofit in 2010.
Just incredible. You touched on a couple things there. The impact, like who are we to do something like this? But yet, at the same time, it's not being done. So you're feeling that exact need.
I mean, it comes down, through time, you come to this understanding that in order for anything to change in these systems that have existed for so much of human history, everybody has to do their little part, and to say, well, I can't really do that much. So what's the point if I try? That's just, you're being complicit in the continuation of oppressive structures. That's truly what I believe and what Elevated Thought represents. So if everybody does their small part, that's where we feel that true change could happen.
Beautiful. So who are the people being affected? Who is Elevated Thought targeting as far as helping? Explain more about the actual organization for me.
Sure. So we're based in Lawrence, and we address racial, economic, and queer justice through creative youth development, beautification projects, youth organizing, and paid opportunities for BIPOC youth, Black, Indigenous, people of color. Lawrence is a primarily Latinx Caribbean community. So, throughout history, we know that these communities have been continuously marginalized, and art is something that is always repressed or removed from their process of becoming a human, right? So we're trying to fill a void in a city like Lawrence where, not every young person in schools, we work primarily high school age youth, they're not getting opportunities to push the boundaries of their creativity and imagination. And we believe art is a form of liberation. So if you're not engaging consistently with that creative muscle, that imaginative muscle, if you're not questioning social norms, if you're not challenging that which exists around you, then that's part of a dehumanization process. And we're trying through art to allow young people the space and opportunity to, flourish as human beings.
Is it something where you're seeing that you believe that kind of there's an artist in everyone?
I mean, now you're kind of leaning towards the nature of humans, the nature of reality, which is good. We do a lot of this Elevated Thought, but I think humans have this immense creative and destructive power. And if you don't have, as seen in the world we live in right now, humans more so than any other creature, animal species, we have more say in terms of how much of this earth is going to get utilized for good or be destroyed, right? So if humans don't have that opportunity to create, then, and I'm speaking through firsthand experience, as like an ignorant person in high school who repressed his creativity for the pursuit of like basketball, for instance, right? Basketball was life, and I put creativity aside. That stunted my development as a conscious human being. So, through that experience, I came to understand that, hey, if we don't provide opportunity and space for young people to create and just be and just push the boundaries of what they believe, then we're lessening the chance that they'll avoid destructive behavior. So creation versus destruction. And for us, art is a form of creativity and can lead to creation, which can bring people together, which in turn can, I hate to sound cliche and utopian, but that is the process of making the world better.
There's so much there. So how are you encouraging the youth that you're working with? My question is basically, is art an outlet for them, or is it more than that?
It's whatever they want it to be. I guess everything starts with conversation. We're not into performative creation where we bring young people into our doors and we say, hey, like, we're all going to work on this. You're going to create this. We're going to show it to the public. And, we get to say, hey, look what our young people created. It starts with the conversation. It starts with building a foundation of self, because there's no way as young people going through everything that they're going through, never mind the trauma that a lot of young people in marginalized communities face, they don't have the bandwidth to ask these big questions about the world, the political, economic, social realities that they live in. A lot of them are coming from homes where, it's about survival, and their parents don't have, or guardians don't have the bandwidth to engage those type of conversations with them. So let's start with self. Like, what's on your mind? What do you want to create? Here's this medium. Here's that medium. Here's this topic. Here's this topic. And just allow them to experience and give them access and exposure to all different forms of art and all different forms of kind of social ideas. And we're not opening up their brains and implanting our ideology within them. We just ask questions and bring up topics and allow them within themselves to talk together. And then once they do that, this kind of back and forth of building that foundation of self, when they get to that point where they feel secure, where they can put their mind and eyes towards the social landscape, then they can start kind of sinking their teeth into those bigger social issues, collaborate, create something that then seeps out into the community to create a larger conversation. So it really starts just with what's on your mind.
I mean, it sounds like it's a great building block. Is this primarily an after-school program?
Yeah. For historically, we've been an after-school program. We do have some contracts with schools before COVID hit, and we had our young staff going in during the school day in some schools, middle schools, and running workshops and programs there as well. Actually,
in the school, how are you dealing with COVID? I feel like since you brought it up, I might as well address that.
Yeah. So we got hit hard, as so many people have been hit hard by the pandemic, and Lawrence was one of the hardest hit communities in the state. So, we had to shut down all our in-school and after-school programs, our community workshops, the commissions. We have an internal revenue generator service. So, clients will hire us to go and do a mural, do a documentary film, whatever it is. And that provides some income for the organization so we can run our programs. So we had about 7 commissions come to a screeching halt. Site visits from funders stopped. So, we have a largely young staff. So 15, me and our program director, Amaryllis, were the only full-time staff members. Everybody else is either project by project or part-time. So we had some young people talking 23 years old and younger that went from working 20 hours a week to working 3 hours a week. So there was a dramatic hit there. And so instead of trying to scramble and figure out how we're going to adapt online, we understood that, we have a young staff of creatives that, they're trying to adjust to this new reality, and their motivation and their creativity is zapped right now. So we focus on just building internally, having staff meetings that are more so check-ins, collective creation periods, just building together as a community. And then our young people started to slowly roll out initiatives. They came up with coloring books that they provided for the community, dropping off at local businesses who were delivering food to families in the city. They're starting to build an educational resource base around, defunding the police, voter suppression, all these pieces that are starting to now emerge after they had the time and space to kind of just breathe. And for us as an organization, we got hit really hard financially, but, we're super, super fortunate to secure some new funders. I was able to go through the Social Innovation Forum out of Boston, an incredible organization that prepares nonprofits for kind of the next phase of their trajectory. And I had an incredible consultant there, and got to kind of build out logistically the vision of Elevated Thought into the future. So that has spawned some fruit. We're in a very good place where we're not reopening our doors to 2021. We're actually moving into a new space, but we're going to use this next year to really build, refine, roll out some more virtual content, online workshops, continue with the educational resources that our program director is overseeing right now. So we managed, we got through it. We rode that wave, and it looked ominous for a little bit, but we're grateful. We're in a good place right now.
Awesome. Glad to hear it. You are listening to Raising Your Inner Voice with Jay Foss. Joining me this evening is Marquis Victor from Elevated Thought out of Lawrence, and we're just kind of delving into what Elevated Thought is, how they've been dealing and been impacted with COVID-19. Do you have plans right now for going into the future, specifically of kind of what you're going to be doing once our society opens back up again?
Yeah, so that's a good question. It's kind of two pieces to that. The first thing is that we, because we're at a place right now where we can breathe a little bit, we can focus a little bit, we can refine and restructure some of the aspects of our organization and operation. We're really going to sink our teeth into the into the justice work, racial and queer justice specifically. You don't know if it's a trendy thing that the public consciousness seems to be shifting. We've gone through these moments in history before where it seems like there's going to be this massive shift, but what happens is there's these appeasement mechanisms that are in place, like reforms or whatever it is, that slap a Band-Aid on something, quell the mob for a little bit, that some people refer social movements to. And oppression just takes on different forms. So we want to make sure that we're doing all that we can to contribute to the movements, the civil rights movement that's going on across the country right now. And we're going to do that through art. We're going to do that the way we know how, but that's going to be a big focus for us moving forward. Additionally, we're going to be moving into a bigger space. We're currently in a 1,300 square foot location in the historic Everett Mills, beautiful building. And we're going to be launching a capital campaign on our 10-year anniversary this upcoming September to retrofit this fantastic space that's almost 7,000 square feet in the same mill building. So that's going to be a big focus for us the next year, with the reopening to the public in the summer of 2021.
What is it specifically about the racial injustice and gender identity issue that you hope to be addressed through this all?
I guess you could just go back to the name of Elevated Thought. I mean, me, I can't speak for the individuals. The beautiful thing about Elevated Thought is all the individuals that are part of the organization, they believe in the mission, and they have different levels of intensity with different buckets of the social justice realm, but it all works together. For me, I look at it as what we hope to do through art and through conversation and through connectivity is just allow that space for discussion and consideration for the limitations that our social structures create. We get comfortable and we get complacent with this kind of rudimentary existence and this inward looking existence that is about survival, making sure you have this, making sure you have that, and forgetting about the people that don't even have those basic things that you take for granted on a daily basis. And why is that the case? We're humans. We're the most affluent country. Why are people still struggling to eat? Why are our children being pumped with chemicals and terrible food? And how come that understanding of, just take food for example, isn't a part of the curriculums in school at such an early age? So we are in so many capacities limiting the opportunities for humans to flourish. And if we can all just engage in a conversation, just put our biases aside as much as we can. It's impossible to do that completely, because we are a result of our experiences, our upbringing, and our trauma, and all these things combined. But if we allow these conversations to sit, if we can actually listen, if we can share, if we can practice gratitude and empathy, that's an opportunity for real change to happen. So we do that through art. That's what it comes down to.
Beautiful. For anyone just tuning in, you're listening to Raising Your Inner Voice. We'll be right back with Marquis Victor.
Stay with us as we continue Raising Your Inner Voice.
Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. If you want to join in the conversation live, tune in Sunday evenings at 7 p.m. Eastern, NorthShore1049.com, and click Listen Live. If you want to gather your thoughts first, record a voice memo and email it to jay.foss@me.com, because I would love to have your voice in this conversation. What does living a better life mean? And what's your process in figuring that out? If you think someone else might need a conversation like this one, then let them know to get involved.
Welcome back to Raising Your Inner Voice. This evening, I am speaking with Marquis Victor of Elevated Thought out of Lawrence. It is a nonprofit designed to kind of help youth in this area, and we've touched on a lot already. I feel like this is a very heady conversation, but I'm getting into it. Marquis, can you talk about kind of any injustices that you are seeing specifically in the Lawrence area that is something that you want impacted through art?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I got to start to acknowledge first all the good work that's happening within the city of Lawrence. You know, there are so many good people in different arenas in that city that have put in, you know, longer than I have in many cases, all that heart, the energy, that love to tap into that beauty, the culture, just the wealth of just love that's in that city is quite incredible. So I got to start by saying that there's just a lot of good happening in Lawrence right now, and you know we've had our ups and downs with the city, you know, operating as an organization, but we're starting to see some more collaboration and some more opportunity to better serve our young people. I think, you know, we can go to one of the main issues that's pervasive across the country right now, and connected to Lawrence, which is, you know, the funding of the police department. And, you know, that's a really touchy issue for a lot of people. You know, I know people, I got family that are in law enforcement, extended family that's in law enforcement. I got friends that their siblings are in law enforcement. So, you know, I think this can get really politicized, this issue. And I think the best way to address it is to take a step back from your political leanings and just analyze the reality. When a community is under-resourced, you know, in healthcare, when they're under-resourced in the education system, when they're under-resourced in human services, when the crime rate is high, when teen pregnancy rate is high, then there really should be a conversation about allocating more resources to improve those different features of an under-resourced community that are just continuous. They never end. And when the police budget keeps on going up and up and up, but these issues don't dramatically change, we need to address that, right? And that's no different from a city like Lawrence. With a continuously increased law enforcement budget, while you know you have like resources in classrooms that aren't going up every year. In fact, you know, recently over the past couple of years they've gone down. So, you know, how are we justifying that? Where are we looking at? Do we think a police presence is going to be the changing factor for a growth of a community? Is that going to allow more young people to flourish by having more cops in the city? Or is that going to reinforce the concept that I'm from a place like this, so this is my reality. Yeah. I'm going to accept that. And these are my opportunities, because places that look like this, that have this type of police presence, the opportunities are typically limited. So there's this internalized hopelessness that we have to address when we see, you know, an increased police presence, when we see a decrease in human services and community building that can really serve the future of the city. We got to think long term with this stuff. It's gonna feel those growing pains. You know, there's a lot of people that say, well, hey, I don't feel safe if you take money from the police. Well, the reality is, across the country, the vast majority of police departments, especially in inner cities, they're responding to minor misdemeanors. You know, the real violent, newsworthy crimes are not the reality, and they do not. The police and the military force that we find in this country doesn't justify that cost. So I would connect that to Lawrence. Yeah.
I hear you completely. Something that I feel like in discussing with people, an aspect of kind of this broad, it's a broad issue, as you say, right? I mean, there's hopelessness inside that's leading to a lot going on outside. And family structure, I've heard that many people say, well, looking at police isn't necessarily going to lead to the change that's needed. It's family structure that needs to really be addressed.
I mean, I think it's community. I think it comes down to community. I mean, I'm gonna we can go all the way back to the slave plantations, and the reason why they survived and they lived, those plantations that didn't move towards rebellion, or find opportunities to escape via the Underground Railroad or whatever it was. They found that their community could hold them up, that could allow them to sustain through, waking up at dawn and working in the fields all the way till dusk. It was community. And, slave plantations were very, very progressive too. Sometimes you had a woman who had 3 unnamed children, or 3 children from unnamed fathers, you know what I mean? But the community didn't demonize her or put her in the outskirts. They brought her in, and, there was still love there. There was still support. So I think it really comes back to community. So if we're investing more in the community and opportunity for our young people, for our children, then it seems logical that that's the move to progress. Having increased police presence in community, that's not when there's so much money that could go towards other places for growth in struggling communities, under-resourced communities. That's just not the logical move. That continues the cycle of oppression that the structures in America are based on, unfortunately.
Can you help any listeners understand who might be wondering and questioning, well, but if you're removing the police who are safeguarding communities, right? Because they are doing, as you shouted out earlier, people who are in law enforcement. So if you are decreasing their presence across the board, are you not also increasing the potential for more violence, for a not safe living condition in the community?
Yeah, again, it comes back to individuals, and I'm not naive to think that I can speak and it's going to change somebody's mind. You know what I mean? That never happens with anyone, right? It really takes an individual to really take a step back and think and analyze and introspect. So the reality is so much of the fear and the concern is just manufactured. And when you even think of something about drugs, right? There are so many people that are locked up for drug offenses, right? Marijuana, cocaine, whatever it is. And we're spending exorbitant amounts of money. You got some people that are complaining about the amount of taxes that are taken out of their paycheck, right? Well, part of that issue is that it's going towards the great enterprise that is the justice, the criminal enterprise in America. You know what I mean? So that's a direct reflection. It's not that money that's taken out isn't going to help people, open up a book that's going to enlighten them or get an opportunity to paint a mural. That's not what it's going towards. Yeah. It's going towards, the prison industrial complex, the militarized industrial complex, all these different things that perpetuate violence and to make people fear violence. So we have to kind of remove the veil. We have to think about these things on a deeper level. And, people have to challenge their own beliefs, and they have to ask some tough questions themselves first,
So tough questions that I should be asking myself are not just necessarily, do I feel safe, but what?
I think, do you really want other human beings to flourish?
Yeah.
Are you really concerned about the well-being of other people, of your species? We're Homo sapiens.
Yeah.
If we're really concerned about the future of our species, of the possibilities of what we can do on this earth, how are you living that? And if you can't find a way in your life where you legitimately care about others, well, I care about my family, I care about my neighborhood. Your neighborhood and your family, the world's progress isn't contingent on them. It's yellow, brown, red, black, white, all these colors, all these bodies. But unfortunately, the yellow, the brown, the red, the black, they haven't had the opportunity to flourish and to become fully human so they can contribute to the further development of our entire species. So what are we doing to hinder that growth? What are we doing to support it? I think that's a good question to start with.
Absolutely. Well, and I think you're addressing that, right, with elevated thought.
We try, like I said, it's our little part.
I love it. This is a great conversation. For anyone just tuning in, you're listening to my guest this evening is Marquis Victor out of Elevated Thought, which he founded in Lawrence. And I want to shift gears for a second. So I feel like we've been talking about Lawrence itself, kind of broadening that for a moment. How is it that the arts impact us as humans?
Yeah, wow. I mean, there's a lot there. I mean, I really think creativity is an opportunity to kind of tap into the essence of, you know, what it is to be human. You know, our women give birth, which is another shame that they've been marginalized throughout history because they're immensely powerful, far more powerful than men, in my opinion. But anyway,
why do you say that?
The ability to create, and not just create, but to share that, there's so much vulnerability in that as well. I feel like, you know, when we've had sessions in Elevated Thought, I'm thinking, you know, with a few years back when I was facilitating most of the programs, you know, for each individual, it felt like they were revealing parts of their soul in a safe place, you know, where you didn't have to fear retribution. You didn't have to fear, you know, explicit judgment and all these things. Everybody was vulnerable. Everybody was creating. Everybody was thinking. And so when you do that, I feel like you can tap into, you know, the deeper aspects of your humanity, which allow you the bandwidth to grow and evolve. I think there's a big shame in those in folks that have got to a certain age where like, hey, I'm this age, you know, I went through this experiences. I'm good. I'm comfortable here. Like, I don't need to learn anymore. I don't need to hear your opinion. This is good for me. This is comfortable. And I think that's a shame. And I think constant creativity, if you're creating in some way consistently, it's going to push you to evolve because you're grappling with things in your mind, you're grappling with things that you've seen, you're grappling things that you've experienced. So when you put all those things together, it can't help but kind of push you forward, you know, push you forward in understanding self and pushing forward and opening up more doors in terms of what reality is.
Why is understanding self important to you?
I think for me, I couldn't make any strides forward until I had at least somewhat of a grasp on who I was and where I came from and my experiences. And I went through years and years and years of avoiding that, of hating myself in unjustified ways because, you know, just a lack of introspection. But when I started to really dive into creativity and to try to understand self, and that's an ongoing process, you know, that's forever. But, you know, once I started to do that, you know, you're like, all right, yeah, like I'm me right now. Like I feel like I'm one with self. Now let me see what else is out there. I have this grounding of self, but the world just isn't about me. Like, we can't navel gaze our whole lives, you know. We can't let the ego just suck us in so we're utterly consumed with self. But once we do that, like, and we tap into that, we're like, all right, so I understand that, like, what else can I understand about all this stuff that's around me?
I want to ask you, what sent you down this path? So when you interned at the radio station back in the day, I remember you were big into basketball at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like on one hand, you've already addressed this because you mentioned the arts is kind of right. I mean, poetry, the arts is what sent you down this path. But what was it that drew you, or what clicked in your mind of, I need to dig deeper here? Because I have a dear friend who is always referencing like, oh, we need to peel the onion, right? We need to peel the onion. We need to get deeper into the layers. What was it that kind of sparked that in you?
Yeah, well, I got I got thrown on my behind. That's pretty much what it was. I grew up with creativity was a great as a biracial kid. It was a good way for me to just have that space to myself and to start to grapple with some of these questions that I had. When I would go to the suburbs, when I would go to the city, and I would feel outcasted in both places, it will always, I started writing poetry. I think I wrote my first love poem in second grade to somebody, and, which she turned me down, which is the first of a long line of heartbreaks. But when I got to high school, when I went to Central Catholic, by the end of my sophomore year, I had completely and utterly erased creativity from my mind and from my practice and from my priority, and learning too, which was key because I was always curious. I always wanted to learn. But for some reason, I kind of embodied this like, all right, well, I'm a basketball player and, it's cool to be dumb, or like pretend to be dumb, pretend not to care. And so I carried that on me and continued to repress my creativity, which continued to unleash destructive behavior as regardless if I, kind of went on this trajectory up with basketball, the destructive behavior increased as well. So I got a basketball scholarship out of high school, and 5 months into my freshman year of college, I got kicked out and lost my scholarship. Then I got kicked out of my house, and I was living with a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend of a family member in Providence. And, after being there and, continuing the destructive behavior and dangerous behavior, one night I just picked up a used notebook and I allowed that creativity to reemerge. And that was one night out of a few nights that kind of refocused me and allowed me to evaluate the privilege that I took for granted before, and ask those big existential questions for the first time. Who am I? What am I doing? How did I get here? What's the point of it all? So once I did that, that kind of changed my whole perception of, the reality I existed in. And then when I did that, I looked around me. I was living in Providence, and I was like, man, it is not good out here. Like, why is it so different? How did the world turn into a place with such grave disparities and inequities? And then, that curiosity came out, and I started to read and ask questions, being in class, staying after with the professors at the time I was going to community college in Rhode Island. And I would just stay after and kick it with I took philosophy classes, I took history classes, all this, and I would just ask and think. And that kind of laid the foundation for elevated thought.
Marquis, thanks so much. We're going to take a quick break for you listeners. Hang in there. We have more questions to ask Marquis when we get back about what it means to be an artist on North Shore Radio.
If you have any issues, topics, or voices that you think would be great to be heard on this show, please reach out, jay.foss@me.com. If you want to add your voice to the conversation, record a voice memo and email it to me, or tune in live Sunday evenings at 7 p.m.
This evening, thank you so much for joining us. On the line, we have Marquis Victor of Elevated Thought out of Lawrence. And Marquis, what does it mean for you to be an artist?
Yeah, I mean, hey, Jay, you were just playing Bob Marley redemption songs, Remove yourself from mental slavery. So I think I can riff off that right there.
Sure.
I think when you have the opportunity to create, which again, unfortunately, too many young people across the world do not have that opportunity when it's fertile. But when you create, you're able to, like I mentioned before, access those deep aspects of humanity. And I'll just take this example. I have a daughter, she just turned 4, and I create with her all the time. And, sometimes you want to paint, sometimes you want to cut, sometimes you want to use crayons, whatever it is. But even the time that I spend with her, like I end up getting into it more than she does. And because it's such a it's such a place of peace. Sometimes it's not a place of peace. Sometimes we got to create to get out something that is heavy on us, that it's poisoning us inside. So we got to get it out. So, it's not all flowers and cupcakes creativity. Sometimes it's a very, very painful process, and we're addressing a lot of trauma that has led to that point, right? But creativity allows that space to grapple with humanity as a whole. Nothing is all good for anybody, regardless of where you are in the hierarchical structure, the class structure that we're living in. Nobody is A-okay all the time, right? And so for me, being a creative allows that time to analyze, to reflect, to feel at peace with our inadequacies, our vulnerabilities, our shortcomings. And it also kind of gets something, and almost like releases something that allows us to continue to move forward. You know what I mean? So it's like, if we have something heavy on us, or we're grappling with this thought that's exciting, whatever it is, if we create, we're not going to be stuck in that moment, on that thought, on that trauma. We're able to, keep it, we're not going to forget it, but it gives us an avenue to move on and progress.
Progression. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I feel like I'm right there with you. That's actually part of what spawned this show. Is I think that the worst that is in any particular person, any human, and the best that it is in any particular person or human is within all of us. So I wanted to kind of address that and figure out, how are we going to be better? How can we actually raise that inner voice and look inwardly to impact our surroundings, our communities? Yeah, no, you said that beautifully. We were talking off air, and I asked if there were any songs that inspired you, and you had mentioned that Billie Holiday's "Strange Fruit" was a big inspiration for you. Can you kind of, we're going to go out with that song. I wonder if you could talk about what that song has meant to you and why it's a source of inspiration.
Yeah, so "Strange Fruit" is based on a poem by a Jewish American who witnessed a lynching, and the impact that had on him as a civil rights activist. And Billie Holiday adapted it, and she can't, she has a tremendous amount of trauma, and she was she's a big part of the artistic history of America too, because "Strange Fruit" was not a track that was well received by the powers that be, because it addressed that which I just mentioned. And it was in line at the time. We had the Federal Bureau of Narcotics that were trying to demonize jazz music, because there was a lot of marijuana involved, and they said it was devil's music and all this stuff. So "Strange Fruit" is part of that time as well. It's a song about just aggressive, just ethnic and racial cleansing that the American South was experiencing post-bellum Civil War. And she did this in a way that was just hauntingly beautiful and melancholy, but had so much purpose. And so for me, I lean towards more like the melancholy, but I don't dive all the way into cynicism and pessimism. And I think that "Strange Fruit" track from Billie Holiday, who I adore and is one of my favorite artists, it captures kind of this balance between protest and melancholy. This understanding, but the need to understand in order to move forward, and action to actually move forward. So that's why it has deep resonance with me.
Why don't you get caught up in kind of the pessimistic bent on that?
I mean, because working with young people.
Yeah.
I think when I'm privileged in that way. I get to work. I get to see young people consistently. I have a daughter, who's 4 years old, who's asking the most philosophical questions I've ever heard in my life.
Really? No way.
What is time? Why weren't we all born at the same time? So, you see the imagination, the creativity, the curiosity in youth and children. And it's exciting. It's exciting. And you just want to provide, you don't want to dictate their future. You just want to provide them opportunity and space so they can decide whatever they want to do. And whatever they want to do is an actual possibility. So that really keeps a good distance between the utter cynicism and pessimism.
Beautiful. And how do you entertain and listen? What helps you be in the moment?
I guess it takes time. I think when we listen to somebody, where a lot of us can be really egocentric. And so when we're listening to somebody, we're not actually listening. We're preparing our response to what they're saying. So, hold on, Jay. I apologize.
Go ahead.
Sorry about that. My daughter just screeched in the side room. Speaking of my daughter,
right on cue.
But yeah. Okay. You're gonna have to remind me of the question. I apologize.
So no. I was just asking, so how do you intently listen, and how do you kind of be in the moment?
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. I mean, either with her or with anyone that you're disagreeing with, right? I mean, how do we step outside of our ego and actually listen to someone for who they are and what they're representing, as opposed to wanting to further my own agenda on something?
Cool. Yeah. So we're all equal in our ignorance.
Yep.
We know very, very, very little. So we'd be well advised to, at the very least, entertain new ideas, thought processes, experiences that are different from our own. I think that starting point of understanding how ignorant we are, and regardless the amount of experience or trauma that we've had, for good or for bad, whatever it is, our experience here as a human is so short and so fleeting. And this earth has been around for 13.7 billion years. Yeah. So we need to put things in perspective a little bit. Yep. So we'd be wise. And I think, because when I was younger, I had a view on something. Nope, this is what I believe. Nope, I know you're wrong because I've read 30 books on this particular topic, even though I didn't read, even one book that was against those 30 books that I have even internalized. So I think it's important for us to acknowledge our ignorance and our limited capacity of understanding just the vastness of reality, and allow us to humble us to listen, to pay attention more, and to exude more empathy to those that we can't even fathom what their experiences are.
Beautiful. Yeah. Raw honesty. Yeah. Awesome. Marquis Victor has been my guest this evening. Thank you so much for chatting with me and elevating this thought and raising just your inner voice and doing what you're doing. So I appreciate it. Thank you so much. We are going to go out with Billie Holiday's Strange Fruit.